Okay, so Michelle, do you want to explain who Francine is first before I
Yeah,
start?
so Francine is Sylvia Browne's spirit guide. And she had been her spirit guide since she was little, ever since far back as Sylvia Browne can even remember. So and then there's another spirit guide that will step forward as well. And they both Francine, I want to talk about Francine for a second because Francine is very to the point. Right now, if you ever saw anything about Sylvia Browne is very to the point. So when I say that, our spirit guides are, I mean, they act like we do. They have our not our personalities. They have their own personality, but they're with us for a reason, right? So that way we can be ourselves, right? So, but Francine is very to the point about a lot of things. Um, so I will, and she is here. And so one thing that with all of us being here is that Francine has been um, our guide in this life. Well, obviously she's here right now, so she'll be guiding us through this anyways. But also in past lives, she has been with us because we are all right now working towards our master and perfection, our soul. So she will be guiding us as well. So I'm going to go ahead and let Anne start this, and we will. I want to make sure I can. Yeah, okay, we can go. All right.
I've got mine pulled up in front of me so that it's a little bit bigger so I can read it. So if there's at any time, Michelle, that you need me to stop, I'm covering over your guys's camera pictures and I'm reading from it. So I may not see if you're like, wait a second or something. So just let me know, okay?
Yeah, and since I can't see anybody right this second, Q&As, you might just say, hey, I have a question. I can't really see anybody's unless somebody else wants to be able to be
The hand raising moderator.
yes.
I can do it.
You want to do the hand raising moderator?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll,
And then
I'll
just
speak up if somebody pops into the chat.
Yes. Yes.
all right, and then I will turn around and just kind of go over, we'll
You're
go
like-
back and forth.
Yeah. Okay.
So does anybody have any questions before we start?
Already what? Okay.
No, good.
Okay, because like I said, I can't see y'all. So and I don't know how to pin yet. I will learn how to do that later. Okay, go ahead, Ann.
All right, then.
Good
So
job.
we're going to start off. So if everybody would mute themselves just so that we don't have any background noise while I'm reading or, any distractions to anybody. So for Francine 9/10/1991, I'm going to talk to you in great extensive quantity about God. First, let us start out with who or what is God. All through theological studies, man has had a finite mind, has tried to plumb the depths. Plumb, that's funny. These are weird words. The depths, I feel like I'm reading something from who like way back in the day. Anyway, tried to plumb the depths of his soul to figure out who or what God is and continues to be. We have had every religion address it, every possible concept developed, but it's still a mystery. We have also at certain periods of our history noted that you thought God was dead. This is only man's fragile way of trying to interpret something that he feels is larger than his comprehension. What they have missed is the simplicity of what God is, always was, and continues to be. It's very hard to talk about one without the other because both Mother and Father God always were. Now, when I say that to you, that they always existed, it's very difficult. In other words, no beginning is always more difficult than no end. Because in your finite lifetime, you have beginnings, but you do not want to think that there is an end. And of course, there is not. Mother and Father God always were, and that is where we get into the problem of when did it all begin? Did it begin with a big bang or simply at some incipient moment in time? No, everything within this life or on the other side, heaven, makes circles. Everything is infinite, and infinite means without end or without any sharp edges to it. I think you should know that the magnitude of creation is far beyond most finite minds, wildest dreams, or concepts. Let us
Now,
go ahead. Go ahead.
I'd like to say that, so these, when these are in parentheses like this, right, it starts and then it goes in like this and it says Francine at the bottom. So that is actually Francine speaking. Okay, so when Sylvia Browne was under hypnosis, that is her actually speaking. Okay, so that was a part that when she was speaking out of her, you'll see these like throughout the whole book. So go ahead.
Cool. Okay. Let us start by keeping in mind that both always were God the Father, known as the prima, how do you say that?
Mobilia.
Mobilia, which is the unmoved mover, is the uncreated force that has always been with us and has the male persona. His pure intellect can take a form. The form cannot be held for any length of time because of the magnificence of the force, but has been known at given times to take form. You have been taught that there is a God, and of course there is, eternal, omnipresent, and a real entity. It is not just a force and not just a feeling. It's not nebulous. Father God cannot and will not interfere in your life, yet his love is constant, all encompassing, and he is consistently channeling knowledge. This knowledge, should let you know of the definitive, magnificent nature of God, and the meticulous nature of God, and the wonderful sense of humor of God, and the wonderful creative genius of God. It is almost as if God took a very wide, broad canvas and began to paint all of the things that he would love. And when he painted them, so they were, and they came into being. So the majesty of God is truly wondrous. And again, that must have been Francine speaking. This
Yes.
entity, Father God, and we shall call it entity for the finite mind, can pervade, invade, and hold steady all of life. And all of life is held by the thought processes of the entity. By being held in the mind and hands of God, as it were, our continuation and our alwaysness is assured. In the beginning, if you want to explain it that way, you first existed in the mind of God, every single one of you identically different, characteristically sound, perfect in every detail of what you were to become and to evolve to, existed in this thought process. When you separate from the divine, some of you decide to become mystical travelers or mission life entities, or what we call a kindred spirit companion, and on it goes. But
And we will learn. Oh, sorry. We will learn about those later.
But always it was decided that you would have a theme and you would go out and you would perfect your soul. God in his knowingness does not have the experience of his knowledge, so he had to have messengers to experience through. And each spark of him, each cell of you might equate to his brain you carry. Each of you carries a cell inside of you that is divine genetics, and that divine genetic through you experiences what you experience at the same time, like faxing back all of the information. So God is not only gaining information, but he is experiencing through the cellular content of what you carry with you. So if you do think if you do not think you are part of God, think again. In the deepest form of definition, you are God and you are a part of God. Even though it might be a small part, that part itself is perfect. And that perfectness, regardless of the overlays of behavior, keeps you perfecting. I think that's absolutely beautiful how that gets put to, because and going back to what you've said, Michelle, and it really has stood out with me, that when we're born, we're already forgiven.
Yes.
And we don't look at ourselves as being anything that's greater divine, but we absolutely are, because we're a piece of that divine spark. So I think it's pretty interesting.
Yes. Do we have anybody else that has anything they would like to add or say before we move on?
I just keep getting a picture in my mind of the like two white lights, swirling next to each other in that energy. that's like the center of it all.
That's
Yeah.
cool. That is absolutely cool. Don't mind me when you guys see me looking this way, I'm actually looking at you because my reading is over here. So, okay. So, is everybody ready for me to proceed?
Yep.
We truly are a royal family of beginnings that is higher than any phylum that we know of. You are a pure energy force by God, sent by God, imbued with all Mother and Father God aspects within you. When it has been said that you are made of the image and likeness of God, you are. Some of you are made in the image and likeness of Asna, the mother of God, and the rest of you are made in the image and likeness of Om, Father of God. Om splintered his creations into many divinities, which are all of us, because you are divinity, of course, and must know that, do you not? I hope you know that you are a share of the divine. I hope that you know you are a part of God. I hope you know that you are God. And conglomerately, gosh, these words are killing me.
I'll take over for you in a minute.
You make up the feminine side of Om. In his aloneness and his unselfishness, he created all of these splinterings of shards of creation to be part of him to experience.
Yes. So the truth that is God is so simple. It is so beautiful. It is that God loves you and you love God. That is the sum total of what we know God to be. Not only the prima mobilia, which is the pure intelligence, but also the experiencing part of that intelligence to gain total knowledge, because knowledge without experience is incomplete. So all these myriads of souls emanated from the divine sparkler. These little sparks, which are you and I, began to realize very quickly that it was programmed into us to go out and experience. Now, the reason why she says it is because before time, before, like way before, God didn't even have a name. Okay, so it was just a being, it was just there. So the only way we could experience was to come down to body and life. Because in a perfect environment, such as the other side, you cannot experience any hardship, because on my side, Francine lives on the other side, is perfect. Even though we are evolving towards a point of perfection, still perfecting for God, we have none of the nuances of what your life contains on Earth, or any other planet for that matter. Most other planets do not have anything compared to what this planet holds. So Psalms 23:4 states, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, the reference to death in the Psalms is actually this life.
Yeah.
And the minute you come down to life, descending out of light of the other side, you descend into the valley of death. It is awful to come down here and have to learn. It is very much like your Genesis. If you read Genesis, it is probably the most valid book in the Bible, aside from some parts of the New Testament. Once you want to gain knowledge, you must be thrown out of the other side to come down and experience. My problem here. You see, all of that factual, you see all that is factual. Everybody read it as a metaphorical, allegorical, I can't say the word.
Allegorical.
Thank you. Type of symbolism. Yet actually it was true that the minute you need knowledge, you must now come down here to Earth.
Yep.
God the Father is the patriarchal and male, and he is pure maleness, not only in the disposition, but the patriarchal rule. So please do not get the idea that in the patriarchal rule, there is no feeling. Because you must realize that the knowledge that you send back has feeling, emotion, pain, hurt, and all of the other millions and millions of derivatives, I know I can speak, and phases of emotion that are fed back. But remember this, when this emotion is fed back, it still forms pure knowledge with just the tale of experiencing. So I want to like share an experience was when I was talking to a planetary system. They said, can you please just explain to me or explain to us in knowledge, like explain what a feeling feels like, but explain it in knowledge. Don't explain it with your emotions, because we don't understand your emotion. But if you can give it to us in knowledge, and let me tell you, that took me a minute. All right, that really took me a minute to be able to express a feeling in just pure knowledge, right? But that was interesting because that proves that, there's a planetary system that just wants to understand the knowledge of something, right? Doesn't have to have all that feeling. So God in his equality and the
Magnanimity.
thank you, knows the end result.
These words are killing me in here.
How we might need somebody a little more intellectual to be reading this. Anyways, how it is experienced, even though it is known at the very end, is still data that is acquired. So if you have a theme of tolerance and someone else has the same theme, both will be experiencing tolerance in an entirely different way. Your whole self-referencing is different. The same as people experience childbirth or death or tooth extraction or whatever it may be, you give yourself the contract. That form all the lives you would contract for, you would also experience and perfect your theme the best way you could. You, with counsel and God's help, made the choices to come down here.
Yeah.
Not everyone can be a nun or a minister or a social worker or a teacher or a nurse, but in your own way, you are perfecting for God. If everyone was the same, there would be no multiple levels of experiencing, because every tiny bit of experience, every tiny thought that you have, every decision you make is part of God the Father. All of it is acknowledged, that is acquired. All of it is knowledge that is acquired. The same genetics that you passed to your children, so are God's genetics within you. Even the way a plant grows, God experiencing, God is learning from every single part of how you fix your house, how you drive your car, what you wear, what you decorate with. All that is data. Everything is a giant data stream. Even the ants that build ant hills, which I feel really bad because sometimes I have to get the little tiny ones that have been in my house lately. But even termites that build termite hills. So you see, we can never talk about God as totally singular for any length of time without incorporating us. This makes up the fabric of God, with all of the other millions of souls that are helping and experiencing. That is the conglomerate God. Mother God, on the other hand, always was the counterpart, the emotional part. Now, do not mistake the fact that within the intellect of God, the Father, there is no emotion. It is diminished. In Mother God, Asna, the emotion is stronger and intellect is stronger and intellect is diminished. So you see, you not only have the composite of Father God having male and female counterparts within himself, and Mother God having male and female counterpart within herself. And yet they are the archetypal figures of the feminine and male principles.
Yeah.
So she, on the other hand, being more pure emotion, not without intellect, but pure emotion, is called the great interceptor. When all of this creation was started, she not only had a hand, but was the mother of all of it. In fact, she is more of a primary motivator than he, only because emotion is the primary motivator more so than intellect. Intellect is nothing but a storehouse, more like a library.
Wow.
So one of the questions that somebody from her group asked was, earlier you mentioned that we always were in God's mind. Then we came forth as individual persona. You say that Mother God was an active participant in that. Is it like mating, but not in the way that you think of mating? It is merging. So she's talking about it's merging, not necessarily mating like we would do down here. Question. So the combination of Om and Asna created all. The answer is yes. All that you know, it was a duality of merging and giving birth to the creation. The best of what they thought and wished for and wanted was made flesh. They were co-equal, coexistent in different planes of existence. Her dominion is this world. Her domain is earth life. Question, at what point did we take on the notion of being unique? And Francine says you always had it. Next question. So Mother and Father God combined to make us. Francine says, yes, of course, because there had to be a combination of emotion that was fed into the baby's entities or the embryos, as it were. Otherwise, all of you would have come down as didactics, computerized entities. So there had to be a merging of intellect and emotion. Each man is equal to the grace of God. Question. So Mother God instilled in us the emotion. Yes, that's right. Question. But he, as it were, created us? That's why I said there are couplings all over the place. One time I told you there is a constant repetition. In other words, he has male and female. She has male and female. You become male and female. Inside of you is male and female, which I want to stop for a moment here. This has been proven in science now that in our chromosomes, we do have male and female chromosomes in our body. So science has now proven that. So just think of genetics. So in their coupling or merging, the same as all of you can merge on the other side, birth was given. If we can use those terms to all of the entities, her genetics and his still with the same identical purpose to feed back data to the divine.
Yeah.
Now, data is not necessarily fed back to her, although she can merge with him at any time and receive this data. But it is not as important to emotion as it is to the intellect. So she is the feeling, sensing mother. She works out of the heart, you might say. She listens to petitions. She will intercept. Now, do you guys all know what a petition is? Can you look at the screen? Do they know what a petition is?
I do. The other two don't have their cameras on, so I don't see them.
Okay. So a petition is kind of like a prayer. It's a petition. It's that way you're not necessarily doing prayers. Prayers is more man-made. So it's a petition. You can write them out, because writing things out is actually really good for you. Is that a good way of explaining that, Danielle?
Yeah, it's an asking. Yeah.
Okay. So she will intercept and move things around where he does not necessarily want to, nor cannot. It is not because he does not want to. It is because why should he? If he has the part of himself, which is her, to activate upon it. Again, mirroring man and women in a smaller degree on this planet, the male usually works, hopefully out of intellect, and hopefully he also brings the emotion to it. but mostly the male mind works on a more linear base. She, on the other hand, works from more of the emotion. So magnify that millions of times, and you pretty much can have some kind of vague concept of how it works in pure intellect and pure emotion. So the question is, you say God creates all this and holds it in his consciousness and or conscious statically.
Exactly.
Would be characterized, this is an active job. Once the artist has created the painting and hangs it up, he can remember the brushstrokes, but it is not always in that constant position of always being brushed. Do we have any questions yet?
Nope.
Okay. So he can create it and put it on a shelf, and it's not as oblique as that. It is really more of the fact that I know it is there by my consistency, by my keeping it all on the wall. I am aware of it and I cannot let it drop. So through all of the billions of people who have come through this earth, is not some of the data a little repetitious? I know what you are saying, and that is a very valid question. But you see, when you were made uniquely with your own persona. You did not just acquire your likes, your dislikes, your temperament, because you lived many lifetimes, although that has, she says, flavored you. But from the very moment you came from God, you had a certain temperament, a personality, a disposition, a sense of humor, or whatever. And so how you view each and every tiny particle is totally different. And because God, in his magnificent wisdom, wanted to know every tiny nuance, even as slight as the shading of the painting may be, even if it is off white to gray to lighter gray, it always gives off a different beam of light as it were. So what does he do with all this data? What is the long-term goal? Long-term goal is to constantly keep receiving data, ferociously receiving data. It is learning, and learning is knowledge, and knowledge is growth, and knowledge is spirituality. So we might say the language is so harsh to put into words that God also in his own genre is perfecting. So a thought that came to my mind was Mars, right? Because we eventually are going to travel to Mars, and we're eventually going to turn around and have a planetary system there that we're going to be having humans on, right? So, I mean, there's going to be a lot of things that, I mean, you're just going to keep growing and keep learning. So now who is he perfecting for? The same as you are perfecting for. Hopefully, not only for God, but for yourself, and gaining in the wisdom and knowledge and expansion of your soul. So why do we have to perfect for God? Because he is not all experience, never enough. Experience goes on, even on the other side. Knowledge is consistently growing. If God got to the point that his experiencing part became static, he would not be in the process of growth, nor would we. That is why we choose to keep growing. Some stop, do not get me wrong. Some stop, and that is no slam on them. But those of us who want to keep on, either to become guides or we incarnate into a life because we want to keep learning and experiencing for God. It becomes an addiction. Believe me. Believe me. I don't know if y'all know, but I've seen my soul. Okay. And it just ran around up there. It's like, yeah, that's exactly how I am down here. So if I could tell you everything that you possibly wanted to know, say, for example, what is it like to be an astronaut? I would sit and speak to you to you hours upon end. I would explain at great length about the gravitational field, but you still have not done it, have you? And each person, being individually a spark of God, experiences entirely differently, and your self-referencing makes it all different. This reminds me of what Anne had said to a friend of ours who had lost her son. And I thought it was a really, really, really good way of explaining it, because Anne had lost a child herself. And I don't remember exactly how it was worded, but it was something about Anne had said, your experience is going to be different than mine. Right? I mean, there's so many different, things that transpired that what I went through is not going to be the same as what you went through. Right? The end result, yes, we both lost a child, but the process of grief, of the time, of all different aspects of it, right? I mean, Anne really put that out there when she said that. I was like, that right there touched me a lot, because that's the truth, right? So, what am I experiencing? Let us all say, all of you in this room have a theme of tolerance. Each one will experience that theme at different levels in different ways. It is like all of you watching an accident. Every one of you will experience that accident in a different way. Some of you will get sick to your stomach. Some will self-reference back to when you almost had an accident, which she'll kind of make fun of that part later on, because she's always like, there's never an almost.
Right.
So some will have the empathy for the person. Some will blame the other person. A million, jillion, trillion variations of a theme. It all becomes a gigantic daily chain of reactions. Has God had enough? There is not enough. There's never enough. There will never be. That is infinity. That is eternity. If there was a cutoff, then it would end. God cannot end. From the very beginning of time, there has been multiple upon multiple of experiencing. It is like saying to the scientist, are you ever going to be done? No. A true scientist would say, if I had 10 lifetimes, I would still do the experimenting and the searching and the investigation of the universe. Mother and Father God are melded and welded together as a dual creation. No more could he activate on his own totally than she could. They are truly, you might say, for your understanding, soulmates. They are the other half of each other. So God is love, my friends, nothing more, nothing less. That's by Sylvia. Question. Why were the Gnostics' texts hidden? Because of the mother God concept. This knowledge of mother and father God was the knowledge that tried to hide, and why they ran from Templars to
Rosicrucians.
Christians,
Yeah.
to even what was called the Knights, that the Catholics took as the Knights of Columbus. This knowledge of mother and father God was secretive, that had been garnered by Christ from the essence and the Gnostics, that was later taken to France, hidden away, taken by the scrolls. So one of the messages that I had received, I don't even know when it was a couple years ago, I think. One of the things was, if you take away the female strength of something, then you have full access to men have full access to control. And that is very unfortunate, right? But like I was actually explaining this to my husband earlier. I was watching a movie and I said, you see how those women were fighting, their strength, they're warriors, right? I mean, that I said, can you imagine that that's actually how things were until I don't want to knock men down. I'm just saying that is truth, is how men decided they needed their ego. They stepped in. Women could not do that. And so if you take away that woman's power, and it just went straight to the male, right? And I don't think that they realized when they did that at that time about what Asna, gave to everybody, right? Because we all need emotion, right? I mean, if you don't have emotion, you end up dying, right? So when you think about, incorporating both of them, it's really important. Anyways, what does God think of himself? He said, I am who I am in the Old Testament. He would not even speak in such bad English. Oh, I am who am. I gotcha. He wouldn't even speak in such bad English. You see, the tragedy is that the Bible misquoted Christ. Christ actually said, our Father in heaven says, I am the way, the truth, and the light. And only until you come to me will you know what true salvation is. The word salvation is a strange word. If you break the word up, it means salve. It means balm to the soul. And that only meant nothing more than to ease your soul, to get rid of all of the briar patches of life. And they attributed that phrase to Christ. Christ did not have that kind of ego in which he absolutely would have said or mandated that he was the way, the truth, and the light. And that is why he is so upset, because when the church erected Christ as God, they erected an adulterous situation. The minute that happened, a false god had risen up. And that is the last thing that Christ, this wonderful entity, wanted to do, was to ever take away the thunder from his Father. Yep. Does anybody have any questions on that?
No, I think that speaks for itself.
Well, the reason why I ask is because I do talk to Jesus a lot, and I have stated in the past that he wants people to talk to everybody up there, because they're all souls, right? There's a lot of things that he has showed me that he's like, no, that's just not true. But and if you think about the thing that they were showing me when I was reading this, was why so many different cultures are having a hard time because of this God thing, because of Christ, because of all these things that came through, right? So and one of the things that I think was just talked about this last week was what is it, Muslims over there killing Christians, and this is a horrible thing. However, if you stop to think about that time frame, had they not created this thing about Jesus and being in such power of everything, and Jesus is standing here beside me, so he knows I'm not talking crap, but all this power, then we wouldn't even have a different God. We wouldn't have different gods. We wouldn't have different beliefs, right? It wouldn't be all these things. It would just all be one, like it's supposed to. But that is also man-made. That is how that changed. So the Bible says, do not have any idols before me, yet they are putting Christ as an idol. And you do not even have to have any faith to know that. You just need to have a mind that reasons. It is frightening. It is a frightening testimony to God, the God of love. Out of love, God created out of love. God sent man down to earth. Some people decided not to come down, and God did not condemn them. Even those that separated from him and became soul dark, he will not even condemn them. What will happen is, eventually, if they do not see the light, he will absorb them back into his mind and they will be rinsed clean. That shows shows you how merciful and how good and loving God is. So religion has given you nothing but adultery, idolatry. And the adultery, I can't say it. I know there's a way of saying it, has been to worship the wrong God. And what you have done is worshipped a God of vengeance and terror and fright. And that is a false God, rather than our God of love and continued forgiveness and forever loving. The minute you give God one human trait, such as avarice, greed, pettiness, you have created a false God. God is nothing but pure, unadulterated, unsullied, constant, eternal love. And with love comes unconditional guarantees of continued love. Man has created the adulterous God, the one of pettiness and cruelty. The Gnostics walks with the true God. You always hear that miserable word salvation. Salvation was taken from the word salve. Didn't we already do this part?
Yeah.
And meant balm, and that meant soothing to the soul. And in soothing to the soul, the God of love, not might or right, but the God of love sustains this salve, this balm, this healing ointment. That has been put upon by all these so-called knowledgeable theologians that we have to sit and laugh about, who seemingly try to make God into this complex, convoluted entity. Yet the female counterpart of God does have some of the human qualities, only because she has had to descend to the human level of being the ruler of the world. Still and all, in essence, she is also pure love. But because she has to be interfering, she takes on some of the human qualities. But in her essence, there are none of the human failings. When she is no longer needed to interfere, as we say, she resumes again the anatomy of total unconditional love. What is it?
Anonymity.
Anonymity.
All right, never mind. Anonymity.
Unconditional love. It sounds so easy coming out of your mouth. The question, the betrayal of God. In the Old Testament depicts a jealous, mean, vindictive God. Where did that come from? Because Moses wanted to get all of his people out of captivity, in rebuttal to all of the Egyptian gods, which at the time numbered more than 1,200. Moses, being the salesperson that he was frightened to death that he could not lead his people out of captivity, and decided that he would start putting out the, I guess you might say, PR, that their God was more vicious, more vindictive, more frightening, and more terrifying than any God the Egyptians could ever have had. You must realize that these people were for hundreds and hundreds of years under captivity in the Egyptian rule. So they had naturally absorbed some of that culture and religion. So that is how it started. Moses' press release, so to speak, by his verbalization and his traditional speaking, made this omnious God. And of course, the scribes walking alone would attribute all of these horrendous effects to the false God. It would be no different if you had a silly earthquake. And I would say to you, you see, you have all been bad and there is an earthquake coming. It reminds me of, remember when we were little? I mean, I know I heard it. Of somebody would say, like if you got hurt or you bumped your head, what we would say, did we do something bad? Anybody ever do that when they were little? I know I did. And I would always say it would be God, like, oh, God must be punishing me because this happened, right? Think about that now. I mean, you stop and you think about that. He's not going to punish us.
Michelle, did you see in Jamie just put a question in the chat?
What is the question?
She said, is this a stupid question? So is Jesus, Ganesha, Krishna, etc., all the same level and not actually considered God?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Not a stupid question. I always say to everybody, the stupid question is the one you don't ask, because you would be amazed at how important the smallest question is.
Yes. And I'm only going to read 2 more pages of this. And then I'm going to leave it open for any conversation. Okay. So is this a harsh view of God simply a bad translation? It is not only a bad translation, but it is an ignorant translation. We cannot really blame those people because they were just listening to their leader. I am not saying that Moses was bad, but they believed in him. Man has always been derailed and sidetracked if he does not listen to his own level of consciousness. God loves you. And if you know nothing else in this life, that is what you must know. Because never, ever will God turn from you. You may turn from God, but God will not turn from you. And the purer you keep that channel to God of loving open, keep it uncrusted, because what happens is you crust it up with your words, with all the dogma, with all the rules. Just enjoy loving God and feeling God's love for you. Will we ever have a true translation of the scrolls? I do not think you need to have a true translation of the scrolls. Message I'm receiving right now is because we are all coming into our awakening. Everybody's coming in. The scrolls really do not need to be around anymore.
And you want to know another thing, Michelle, that I just received too, was that we're going to get the information that we need as we need it. Our guides and our higher self up there, and that connection is going to give it to us. So that's what we need to trust on.
Yeah. So it's going to all come out. So only a few scribes who came out of Egypt could read or write. So who cares if a whale swallowed somebody? Who cares if somebody made a rickety boat and put 2 by 2 on it? That is so ridiculous. What they were trying to explain was, how did the earth cool down? How did the oceans get here? So they were trying to be geologists, scientists, and religious people. And they could interpret any way that they wished. So now you have a band of ragamuffin, ignorant people running loose in the desert for 40 years, baked half to death from the sun, hoping that any minute they were going to find food. And they keep passing the same rock over and over again because Moses does not know his way out. This lends itself to pretty crazy writing. And then, of course, you have the fight with the prophets. One prophet says one thing and the other says another. If you look at these writings as history, they are magnificent. So what they want me to explain right here is one person, one prophet. So this is a good example, I guess. When you look at religion, you look at, oh, a better one, yeah, you're right, is any part of it. Okay, so let's look at politics. That's what they're saying, because politics is a really good example for a lot of things. Is that when you are giving messages, now this doesn't have to do with anything else other than giving messages. When we are giving messages and we put our own interpretation into something, our own belief system into it, it changes everything. Okay. Granted, when we are getting messages, we do need to be able to comprehend what it's about, and then that way we can relay them. But when we use, and you see this a lot in politics, unfortunately, is people putting, when you're using your gifts and then you're using your belief system. Okay, so then it becomes all messed up. And so that's kind of what they're talking about right here with the two prophets. You got one saying one thing and another saying another. Okay, so you got that out there, you know, with a whole bunch of people that are gifted, and people are putting their belief system, their own feelings into something. So does God feel pain? Does he ever need rest? He does not have to take a rest. Pure energy force contains all the energy it needs. It is literally atoms, you might say, rejuvenating itself forever, whereas your atoms in your body deteriorate. His created forces are pure, the same as you are pure energy on the other side, because you are the genetic offsprings. You are pure energy. You never get tired. You do not have to go to the bathroom. You do not have to eat. I wish I didn't have to go to the bathroom all the time. You could if you wish. You could rest if you wanted, but you do not need it. What if God blinked his eyes? Here we go again. This is where man gets so askew. He starts putting the human touches to God. If God sneezes, does he lose 500 people? No, let alone any other bodily function that might occur, which he never has. How do you view him? I have seen him in all of my, I guess you might say, my eternal lifespan twice. It is a light and it is a figure, and it is magnificently beautiful. We actually have seen the figure of God standing. What is the feeling? I could never explain to you the feeling. Let me try to create a visual for you. In your time, about 50 years ago, for me, and my time is like a few weeks. We had a festival. It was during the Festival of Lights that we were all centered at the big auditorium. It seats millions. Now it is hard to understand that our space, we do not occupy the same amount of space as you do. And I do not want to get into this, that 100 angels could sit on the head of a pin, but our dimensions are not the same as yours. So when we say millions, it never seems that much. As we were chanting, singing, talking, all of a sudden the air got very still. We live in an atmosphere of your dusk light. You know how it is in your summertime, right at the dusk period? That is what our light looks like all the time. Except this one time, we could tell the sky started to streak like gigantic fingers of purple, parts of red blending into orange, and we knew. Out of that gorgeous cloud mass, this figure began to appear larger than any life you could imagine. Hands outstretched, white robe, and what can you say more? It was the face of God. The one thing that is so magnificent that we hear all the time is the laugh. We can hear him laugh. We can hear his mirth. And when he laughs, his laugh rumbles and thrills and sears with such gigantic joy through our souls. And as he appeared, he was so gigantic, and we understood why he was so gigantic. Was because his essence, his energy, could not be contained in such a small structure. But this one time, and only this one time, and some of the elders and counselors who had experiences in different quadrants or had seen him said that this was the only time that they knew in their recorded time that he actually diminished himself to the point that for a few minutes he could hold the shape. Very tall though, of an ordinary man. And during that time, the light shot from him and entered every one of our hearts. And the eyes and the smile and the face were absolutely beautiful, but it could not be held for very long. You know, this reminds me of years back before I moved out here, so probably was 2016. I was standing over this cliff, just watching, just looking out, and I was talking to God, and I was like, "What would you look like to me if I needed the counsel of a father? What would you look like in human form for me, right? For myself?" And it was funny because the vision that the cloud turns into this shape, right? And I see this beard, right? Kind of reminds me of Grizzly Adams. And if you don't know who that is, the guy from Roseanne, but when he had his beard, so just kind of big, but very inviting, right? Just very, very inviting. And in that moment, I remember just saying, wow, that's the vision that makes me feel safe. So when I'm feeling unsafe or I need a father, that's the vision I can have in my humanness, right? And my human mind, if that's what I needed in that moment, and I need that anytime going forward, that cloud, that version of that look is what I'm gonna see that I need. So he can also condense within himself and appear frequently to us, but he always comes in a beautiful shining light and a form of man, but he cannot hold it long. His power is just too great. He comes in an image that times that I have seen him, which have just been beyond anything I could ever try to express to you. It looked like I was looking at him through heat waves, but a face that I could never, ever begin to describe to you, and a feeling that I could never, ever be able to transmit to you. So to be held by God, how would you describe that? Absolutely. I will tell you of my experience because we can only speak from our self-referencing. I said to our Father, I would like to touch you. He said, come to me. And as I did, he put his arms around me and held me close to him. And my heart filled with such joy. It is like our rejuvenation of our battery. We can do this as many times as we wish. And so he enfolds us in his arms and holds us and loves us, and everything then becomes complete to us. All you have to do is touch the hem of her garment, and she is there. She is much faster than he is. It is hard to explain. I think that is because she has the dynamics. He is static. So he is constantly present and loving and perfectly beautiful. She is full of more fire and fury. She knows all the emotions. So if you call her and you really seriously call her, she is there. There is no one that she has not attended to. And she becomes in many forms, whether people think it is the blessed mother, she will come by any form, but it is always her. She can get rid of grief very fast, and she can heal quickly. She can get rid of the terrible illnesses as well as minor illnesses. Now I'm going to stop here on page 11. And we'll continue from there from next time. But I also wanted to explain that I'll write that down. I'm going to stop sharing that part. That when Asna came to me, she just, I don't even know how to explain it. She just had really long, beautiful hair, right? And just very inviting as well. And it was just like a vision. It wasn't, and I was in the bathtub and she came in front of me, right? And it was right after I remember just being so upset because I needed the money to get my son an attorney. I was willing to get a divorce at that time. I was so upset. I'm like, I don't care how we do this, we got to do it. And everything came in alignment. Everything happened right then and there. And I could feel in that moment that I was being heard, like really feel in that moment, because I got the loans that I needed. And I mean, I got one loan right after the other loan on top of each other. I don't know how it happened, but I got them both in the same day. And I was like, you know what? I don't care. Right? I don't care how it worked itself out, but the point that it did. So I would like to leave this open for talking.
I was actually going to bring something up that I had talked with you about yesterday, and that was, as Michelle had mentioned, I don't know, did you mention it here or in our other thing about my child? I think it was in here. I had a daughter in 99 that passed away, and she was not quite 3 months old. And when it happened to me, of course, I was going through a lot of emotional stuff in my life, and we had a lot of children living in our house because I had married my husband and he had kids and I had kids, and then we had this daughter, so we were a blended family, and there was like 6 kids in the house. And but when she passed away, I woke up that morning to hearing him say, her name was Maxine. He said, Maxine is gone. And when he said gone, I thought he meant physically gone, like she's gone, and I was waking up and stirring when I heard him say this, and it's going through my mind very quickly. How could she be gone? She was here in bed with me when I went to sleep. And when I turned over and I saw her, she definitely didn't look like life. And that vision was like burned into my mind of what she looked like. And there had been several days after that, just a lot of stuff going on, and her funeral. And there were some people staying at our place, and they were super, one of them was super insensitive. And I was struggling with having this vision in my mind that every time I closed my eyes, that's all I would see. So I didn't want to go to sleep. I couldn't shake it. And then I finally sat down and I just prayed. And I said, God, please, can you please take this vision from my mind? I just can't. I can't do it anymore. I can't see it anymore. I don't want to see it anymore. And the funny thing about it is, and I will tell you almost instantaneously, it was gone, because it was what I needed at the time to have that removed. And when I asked, I've never had it again. I know vaguely, kind of, I could imagine what she would look like, but that vision was taken from me and I've never had it since. And I feel like when we totally give ourselves and we ask, please be here for me, please take this from me, it absolutely happens. And that was a huge thing for me in understanding how close my relationship with God actually was. So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there. So I'm done. I'm complete. Whatever.
Yeah, I know. I was so is Jesus, Kalasha, and Krishna, etc., all on the same level. Okay, so yes, I did answer that. Okay, just wanted to make sure.
That's
So
why I was like, there's a question in the chat. That's why I brought it up, because I saw it.
does anybody else have anything they would like to add or want to know about this, or what? Maybe they got a message.
I have a question.
Okay.
Um, I'm trying to find the words. Of course, as you know, Michelle, I grew up in a pretty conservative religious household.
Yeah.
My father was a minister. Do you think Mother God could visit us, or Father God could visit us, and we wouldn't know it's that entity? Are we, or are we, because we are more receptive when we're asleep, do we know that that's who it is? We just don't remember when we wake up. I used to have dreams of people I didn't know when I was small, but of course, that got poo-pooed on pretty fast. But is it possible you don't realize you're being visited by Mother God because you asked for comfort or
Well, yeah. I mean, I think what it is that. Okay, so this is how they're explaining this. So we've gotten, like, so many of us that are raised in a church, we're so used to the masculine side of it, right?
Yeah.
And so we didn't really stop to think about the feminine side, the emotional side of, and the beautiful side of all that, because everything was so manly and so masculine,
Yeah.
right? So you stop and you think about the times, and just stop now and just thinking in some times that you really just had these emotions inside of you and you just needed this to change, and all of a sudden it did, right? She is that. So she comes to us all the time. She's always around us. Like, the energy is always with us, right? It's just a lot of us are so, when we think of we don't think about the emotion part being with her, right? We only think about the intellect part. So to answer your question, she's always, so she can come to you in your sleep. She can come to you while you're awake. She's going to be there. Actually, the energy is here right now. And she's actually, the whole energy is right over all of us. So right now you all should be feeling something, because all I'm feeling is this overwhelming feeling right now that it's like a peace. So, well, Anne just yawned, so
I've
obviously,
been yawning my butt off ever since our last.
well, I'm just saying, well,
And it
also,
feels so good
but
when
she
it
did.
happens.
She just literally, the whole energy was just here. So, you know who I realized is not here? It's Aurora. She must have had to, but yeah, so, does that answer your question?
Kind of.
Okay, what part? Go ahead and ask me. Let me see if I didn't explain it.
I wished for the beatings to stop when I was a kid. And of course they didn't stop until I was bigger than her. But
I got you.
sometimes when I woke up, I couldn't remember the beating. Even now, sometimes I can't remember beatings.
So what she's saying to me right now is there was a point where, not that she was banished, but she had to stay back for a while. And they had to allow, they had not just, I mean, for both sides, they both kind of took a step back for a lot of things, and she was pushed back. Nobody wanted her for so long. They pushed her away from everything, that she stayed back for so long. And for that, like, she has been like trying to apologize, like coming forth like extra for people now, because of the time that she actually was actually pushed back and nobody ever wanted her.
I see.
Yeah, it wasn't like, I think it's just more of the fact that we didn't know she existed,
Yeah.
right? We
Yeah.
never understood that she existed to even be able to call upon anything.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And when we're raised in a church like that, and a religious thing, it's all the masculine, and we don't talk about the femininity part of it. And so now she is able to come forth, because now it is not just about the intellect part of God anymore.
Okay.
Does that
Thank
make
you.
more sense?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else?
So I like how they brought up how each one of us could go through the same exact scenario, but still have like a different perspective on it, or a different reaction to it. Because I've always struggled with that my like entire life. I think within the last like 5 years, I finally got it, where, I still do it sometimes, but I stopped comparing myself to others that went through the same thing, that came out of that scenario different than me. Like, they didn't take it, from my perspective, they didn't take it that as hard as I did, or didn't affect them as much. So I like how they touch base on that.
Oh yeah, that is um a really good thing to realize, is that we all do go through things differently, right? And because of that, and that's one of the reasons I always said that we're all in different classrooms, right? Because how I'm going to feel about something, like, let's just say, like me and Ann were talking the other day, was about death, right? We're talking about death and how we no longer, now I'm not saying that if something happened to my children that I'm not going to hurt or anything like that, but you know, she was like, you know, you get to the point where you see death, and death is like just this beautiful gift, right? And it's all these beautiful things. And then I looked at her and I said, yeah, but you know how hard it's been for me to be able to accept, and I know death is beautiful, but how hard it is for me to accept that without feeling like I'm emotionless, right? Because you have to figure, you know, when you look at death, there's grief. So with grief, you have so much anger, right? You have all the sadness, you have all these other emotions that no longer are existing when you learn to say, hey, like, for myself, I'm going to look at death as, you know, as a place of honor, you know. And I'll tell you what, the dark side does tend to do this little shithead thing to me, where they will use my children as an example for me, and they will put visions in my head about my children, and they know that my children are everything to me, well, they are to most of us. And they'll put these visions in my head of something happening to my kids, and I'm just like, you know what, don't get me wrong, that trauma is going to stay in that spot, but I promise you that my son's body won't. If something were to ever happen that would be tragic, that I'm going to that spot and I'm clearing it. Every ounce of my son will be up, right? If something were to happen. Okay. But I know that when he got there, he would be happy. So I'm trying to learn to take my own feelings aside and the humanness of something, and just be grateful that, like, my family, the animals that are on the other side, all of us that have, you know, every people on the other side, friends, and God knows I have so many up there, is be happy. Finding that peace of that happiness, right? And it's hard because I look at other people and I see people going through grief, and I can't compare where I'm at compared to where they're at. Right. I just can't do that, because I have finally come to the point where I have to honor something, because if I don't honor it, then I'm not honoring my soul. I'm not honoring who I am. Not saying other people have to go through the same thing. I'm not honoring myself. Right? We all know that death is a gift, right? We know that, but can we, it's hard to honor something like that.
Yeah.
Because
And
we're
then
human.
we're also human. Yeah. So we have
Yeah.
all these, we're so complex that we have all these emotions that it's kind of like, yes, we can take ourselves out of the human experience and look at death in that way. And then, but at some point, I feel like, because that's how I've always looked at my mom passing. But then it was like I never went through that human experience, though, with feeling the emotions. And that caught up to me and bit me in the ass. But so I still had to go through that human experience, and so I can finally get to the end point of where, I can be okay with her being gone and that sort of thing. Like I don't know how to explain it.
You mean like feeling the anger?
Yeah, like going
Yeah.
through the whole like grief process,
Yeah.
because I never did that. And then, like I said, like later on in the years, it bit me in the ass for not feeling it, because I was just holding it all in. I wasn't like processing it and in the human experience. So like I knew she was on the other side. I knew, and I was happy she was no longer in pain, and I was, you know, and in that the spiritual sense of it, I was all right with it.
So I have a question for all of you before we end this. Oh, wait a minute. We have till 7:30. That's right. I was thinking 7. Sorry. So this one might just be a little bit earlier. We'll see. I was thinking it was at 7, 9. I don't know. But so when we talk about this is not, I don't even know if it's in the book, honestly, but I'm going to ask this. When we think about the human experience and we think about when you said, you have to go through this as a human experience, you have to feel this, you have to feel that. Do we actually have to, or are we taught that?
I don't think we have to. I hate to jump in on this, and that was a piece of it that I was hoping.
Well, no, I want all of us to have an input on this question because it's a very interesting question.
I
Right.
think it's probably per person. Like if you feel like you need to, then yeah, but if you don't, then you don't. Like I don't.
Well, I think the question more is do you think that we were taught that we had to? Do you think it's in a belief system that goes way back? Or do you believe that because it is a belief system, right? Maybe that is just that. Or do you believe that it's something we really have to do?
I think if I can chime in here, that for me, for my own personal, I don't think it's something that we have to do. I think that each individual person goes with what it is that they need at that time to process however they're going to process, whether it be on a spiritual level, a human level, or a mixture of both. Absolutely, for us individually. For myself, I don't feel like at this point, because my dad recently passed away, and so did my stepmom, who was like a mom to me after I lost my biological mom at a young age. I was only 22 years old when she passed away, and I took on my brother and raised him because he didn't have anybody. But in them passing, seeing them pass was different for me than it was back years ago when my mom passed away and when my daughter passed away. And people that I've lost recently too. It doesn't hurt me the way that it did before because I realize now where they're going and what's going on. And so within myself, I sit almost happier now. Not like, oh, yay, they're gone. I don't mean it that way, but I mean it in the sense that this chapter ended for them and they get to go on to something else that I have to wait to be able to get that piece, if that makes sense. That's the way I take it now.
I think you have a point though, Michelle, because how we are, the environment that we grow up in and the lessons taught to us by our parents do cause us to make judgment calls about what we need to do or what we should do or what we have to do. So if you haven't broken away from that, then that have to or should do, that comes from your decisions made as a child, perhaps, and influenced by your parents. Whereas if you've come away from that and started thinking independently of your parents, it is less that and more of, do I want to?
I like that you touched on that, Ruth, because that's exactly it. I saw something a certain way when I was younger. And
Mm-hmm.
now that I've pulled away and I have my own belief system because of the connection I have with my higher self now, I understand it differently than I
Yeah.
used to. And now it's more of a comforting thing and not a hurting thing.
It's still a little painful. I mean, I had not yet forgiven my mom when she passed. So it was a little painful, actually. I felt glad that she wasn't in pain anymore because she had kind of a painful death. Lung cancer is nothing to sneeze at. But I also felt that, not regret exactly, but oh my God, I could have fixed it, or I could have made amends, or I could have told her I forgive her. Would that have made the passing easier for her? So there is still pain in that. I'm happy she's out of pain, but there is still some pain for me left that this rift between us wasn't closed a little bit.
Right. Right.
That was a long time ago, though. She died in 1998, so it's not what it could have been.
Right. And see, I was very, very lucky when my mom passed away at 22 that her and I, because I had a very difficult relationship with my mom. My biological mom had a lot of problems, but she died of lung cancer too. So I know what you went through seeing
It's
that.
deadly. Yeah.
My mom was in a lot of pain as well.
Yeah.
I was lucky that her and I did have some type of a closure
That's good.
before she passed away. Yeah.
Danielle, you had something?
Uh, I did, but it went away.
Sorry, I hope I didn't interrupt you.
No, no.
Well, let me tell you, I got this. There was like, they were saying, emotions, they are held inside of our body, right? And emotions are what create us being sick. And then they showed me a vision of my grandma, my great grandma, when she passed. Now, my great, I thought she was sleeping, right? So they wanted me, I was like, okay. Because I was like, I'm trying to think way back. And I was like, if it would have been tragic for me my first time. And I was like, no, I remember when and I just thought she was sleeping. And then they took me through the journeys of other people passing. And I honestly, I can't think of one person that did not feel peace with. I remember when Janice passed. That was probably the hardest one for me, is when my friend Janice passed. And that's because I was at the hospital. And when they took her off of everything, right? And I had to watch her literally die, like downstairs where they take you before they take out your all your organs and stuff like that. So I stayed with her downstairs before they took everything off. And I remember freaking out on the doctors because I thought they were killing her. Because all you can hear is her trying to breathe. Right? She's grasping for air and she's grasping for air. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? I'm like, she's trying to live. She's trying to live. And I'm like, no, she's literally, she's not here. Right? We have to do this. And that was very tragic for me. That was my moment. I honestly think that's probably what broke me to finally like snap and not give a shit about anything anymore. And that's when I turned to drugs, is when I really, at that point, I didn't feel like I had anything fucking left to stand on. Because
How
that
old were
really
you?
did. Huh?
How old were you?
This was she passed away in 2015. And I started doing drugs in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, I mean, my niece passed. I mean, there was a lot of people that passed away. I mean, it was a hell of a year. But I remember, I was like, just thinking about it going, and then my grandma, right? And so I've held all of these emotions inside. So I mean, I can understand where we're all, these emotions, but it just really makes me wonder, like, I don't think anybody ever told me I had to cry. I don't think anybody ever told me I had to feel a certain way, but I'm sure that I probably could not have acted up in a funeral. I mean, what if I would have walked in and been like, this is their happy place? Why am I, why is everybody so upset here? Right? So, I'm sure I would have had a different reaction as a child. But and I'll tell you, my grandma was like my mom, because my grandma raised me. And I was angry when she passed. I was fucking mad. I was mad at everybody in my family. I was mad at myself for not being there.
Yeah.
But she gave me a gift, right? I got a gift, and I got the gift of watching her pass. I got to see her cross over, even though I wasn't with her. And she probably gave that to me because she knew I'd fucking go crazy. Right? But I mean, really, when we think about death, do we think about death as, okay, let me ask you this. This is a better question. Why do you think it is in our humanness that when we don't have the person or animal, the soul with us anymore, why do you think that's so tragic? I mean, and honest, I want somebody to be really honest with me about that, is why do we feel that it is so tragic that the humanness or the soul, because we have our pets too. Why do we find that so tragic when we're spiritual beings and we know that that their soul is still here
Mhm.
with us? Why do we find that so challenging?
Well, I think in the beginning, if you don't, I think the closer that you get on a spiritual path, the more understanding that you have. But you have to consider most people are within religions that are telling them that when you pass on from here, oh my gosh, fire and brimstone, if you didn't live a good life, then you're going to go to hell and you're going to burn in purgatory and your family member's not going to be up there in heaven. It's going to be this long drawn out horrible thing. So then you have a fear of it, right? An innate fear. So then you start thinking to yourself, where did my loved one go? Are they there or are they down there? So I think that until you really start understanding and grasping the concept that we don't have a vengeful God, that we were all forgiven at birth, that
Yes.
we sign this contract when we come here and we go through these things to live a human existence, to give that knowledge to our great creator, right? And then when our soul ascends back up there, we go back and then we decide if we come back again. That is so simple that there's no reason for us to hold on to a fear of losing somebody. And where did they go? Where are they at?
Yeah. Jimmy, I'd like to hear from you. What do you think?
I'm not sure. I think it's more of them physically, like we can't see them, we can't interact with them on a human level. I think that's where I like see it at.
Like having that full on energy with us that
Yeah. Like as a kid losing a parent, that's even I think more of that connection, but because you have that parent like leading you through life and now there's not that there anymore. As an adult, like losing a friend or another like a family member, um it's more of like just not having that everyday human connection, like where you can't just call them up on the phone or if you're having an issue, I mean, yeah, we can talk to them. Like for me personally, I don't have that mediumship ability like some of y'all do. Like I
yeah,
don't.
yeah,
You
she
have
does.
it.
She just hasn't been practicing for a little bit.
It's like it's like I can't see them. I can't just text them or just call them on the phone or go hang out at go on a hike with them or whatever it is in a physical way. I think that's kind of the
So, kind of like just like having that that pure soul energy when it's here, that um it's almost like you have to have it's like food, right? We got to have food,
yeah.
right? And you got to have that energy, you got to have that feel that it's just something that we have to have. Do you think that in any way holds us back from things?
What do you mean? Like hold us back from what?
I'm like experiencing like other things in life by always needing to have them there with us. Do you think it's like one of the things I was just thinking about? I remember saying, I don't want to turn around and do this. Like, what if I forget what she looks like? What if I forget this? What if I forget that? Right? Family,
Yeah.
family. I missed. Wait a minute. Cynthia wrote family, family. I miss the love of my pets gave me. Oh yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And maybe that's it. It's the unconditional. Even if like somebody was so mean to us and they passed, right? Your souls still loved each other in some weird way, right? I'm used to not getting that from family. Yeah, that it's hard when uh what I was just saying, when you have somebody that might have treated you not so good, and but yet you still have these feelings for them. And it's because the feeling of the soul, that soul is so powerful, right? That soul is just light. And I wonder if that's what we're missing the most out of. I wonder if we're just missing that pure soul. But then I see that part of us wanting to put our arm over our animal, or putting our arm over the person that passed, like just hanging out, talking. I mean, I know I don't get full on conversations with my grandmother anymore. You know what I mean? Even though I am gifted. But at the same time, I don't know. I think I'm really starting to find the peace in it though, right? I want to find peace. I want to find peace in the death. Because if I don't find peace in the death, then I hold that sickness inside of me. And the sickness doesn't even need to exist, does it? What do you think? No?
Come on, Danielle, speak up, girl. You,
I know. She's over here shaking.
you got something to say it.
All right. I think death affects humans because we are very grabby people. In our human existence, we are very possessive and very grabby at things that we think are ours, whether that be a person or a thing. And so when we lose that, we're like, but that was ours.
And we can't touch it anymore, right?
Yeah. And but like that's just um I I don't know how to put it. Like, okay, what they tell me is Earth is a master class in transforming limitation into freedom. So we're put on here, with these limiting thoughts, limiting beliefs that, are created through our, experiences in the younger years, which kind of sets us up for the lessons we're going to learn when we get older. And that's like our limiting beliefs is what we have to, is what we come down here to do. Like Earth is just, it's a master class. And
That's very true. Earth is the master class, right? This is where we're mastering our soul, right? So I mean, when you think about that, and you think about uh I don't know if I'd heard this or if I'm just now receiving it, but there's something that just popped in my head like a picture for some reason. Was so I've heard it somehow, was that besides of suicide, okay, is that when we pass, that was us already telling ourselves that we had already learned the lessons we came here to learn. So whatever that may be, when we pass, that was what we had already done. What we already came here to do, what we came here to do. And just hearing, yes, that's correct. So, I mean, so that's very interesting as well. Like, so we are, I mean, that's the truth. We're here to master. Right? We're all here to master our souls. And with some people, maybe some people don't want to come back down here to learn.
Yeah.
Maybe because me just want to stay.
And I think that speaks to the effect of what like Anne said, and like, like maybe like in your younger years, death may have affected you more, but then once you've mastered that limiting belief of like, oh, I know where they're going, I know everything's cool, like then death doesn't really bug you so much anymore, You're like, okay, cool. Like I know where you're at, I don't know.
No, I'm following.
Well, another piece of it that I want to put in really quickly too is that, and Michelle's correct on it, but I also received a message on that stating that there are times that we do hit where we're not necessarily doing what we're supposed to do or haven't lived the actual piece that we're supposed to, but we come to a point where our higher selves know that we're just not going to get it past that time. So that's when it's cut off. It's time. All right, you're done. You get to reset and start over because you're not necessarily doing everything that you're supposed to be doing within this existence.
Well, and that's the thing is when we
right?
pass, when you pass, you're already that's where you look down upon yourself, and not in a bad way, but you look down on yourself and you say, did I really learn everything I was supposed to?
Right.
What could I have changed? What do I need to do better? And then depending on, as they're putting this right now, laughing at me, is depending on who you are, if you want to stay up and be educated and stay up there for a while, or if you want to turn around and go through speed dating and go through the speed classes and then jump back down here, right? And fucking turn around and be like, why am I all over the place? Why can I not keep my shit together?
Done.
Right? Let's turn around and complain about who we are when we were the ones turning around and decided how long we wanted to stay up there and how long we wanted to learn and how we wanted to jump back down here. Right? I mean, we're the one that I saw my soul up there. I mean, I literally watched my soul. And they're like, this is exactly who you were. And I was like, ugh, I could so see it. Right? As I make fun of my own self, going, God, I put my own shit in my own. I put myself through a lot.
I feel we pull our own plug, right? When the time comes. Up there,
Yeah,
our higher selves,
yeah, ourselves. I mean, they'll take care of us. We know, whatever the lessons may be. I personally have not lost a mother, and I'll say that I personally have not. All of you have. I don't know if Linda actually has, but I know everybody else in here has. But my grandmother was my mother, but no, my biological person, no, she's still around. And I say my biological person. I mean, yes, I love her, but she doesn't. I don't know. She just doesn't. For some reason, she doesn't reach out to me to be, to do things like I would think, like I would do with my own children. Right? I reach out with my children. I want to do things with my children. I want to be around my children. I don't want to be around my children all the time, but I want to be around my kids, right? And even though my oldest son and me, we're a lot alike, but yet we're different. In the way that we both love to get into some really good debates about things, right? And my husband's always like, "Oh, this is just too much for me," and me and Devil, and they're still going blah, 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 right? And he's about non-spiritual. I'm over here about spiritual, and he's like, blah, 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 blah. So, but we always seem to come back around, and we won't stop until we find that love for each other, right? We both will keep going, but then there'll be that moment where we're like, nope, we're good now, right? And that's people, we've been that way since he was born. And people are always like, I don't even understand it. It's like, it's not meant for you to understand, really, right? It's meant for us to understand. But that's like with my mom, I don't have that. And so I've come to understand that that's just not going to happen. And as I had said, before, I've kind of, and I know this probably will hurt my mom by she ever, when she ever listens to it. She probably won't, because she doesn't watch any of my stuff. But is that, I mourned her. I mourned who she is, because if I had an expectation, if I continue to expect something, I'm going to continue to get hurt. Right? She's not gonna, I don't know why she's there for both of my brothers, but she doesn't want to hang out with me. I don't fucking know. Right? I mean, maybe it's the trauma she went through when she got pregnant. Maybe it's the trauma she went through when she gave birth. I remember when I really needed her one time, and these people were following me around and all this crazy stuff was happening. Literally, her words were, "What do you want me to do? I ain't fucking dying for you." That's what she said. "What do you want me to do? I'm not fucking dying for you." So that hurt. right? I mean, that was painful because I will tell you what, I was going through something so crazy at that time that I needed a mom. And I needed somebody that would say, I am here, I'm going to do all this for you, right? And because I would die for my children. I would. I couldn't even imagine. So even if my kids pissed me the fuck off, I'd still die for my children. And so I'm like, you know, that was really shocking to me. And but at the same time, I mean, she's done other things, don't get me wrong. But I finally just had to mourn the person I wanted her to be. You know, and that is just how that had to be, like that. And that's about the closest I'm going to get to anything like that. Now, I will say that I had past life experiences where I've lost my children and 2 separate lives, and that was hell. And if I didn't straighten up some of my shit, it was going to happen to me again, and it was not happening. I mean, I couldn't let my kids be around people because I was afraid they would die, something would happen to them. I lived my life in just fear. But you know, all these fears I was going through is because of fears that I was taught. Right? Fears that I was taught about things, fears that I was taught about death. I remember there was a point where you had to get buried, right? God forbid if you try to get cremated, you're going to hell.
Right.
I remember saying to my grandma, you need to get cremated. And the look on her face was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, for real. I'm like, people are doing it. I'm like, you know, the whole story about you're going to go to hell because you're burning. No, you ain't. You're still going to heaven. And there's really, I mean, why go on the ground? Nobody's coming to visit. I mean, it's really hard. My grandparents are buried in Auburn. Do I go? And my aunt, my grandparents, Jared, are all buried in the same cemetery. Do I go? No.
Ruthie's going by.
Hi. But I'm like, I don't ever go. Because it's so hard for me to get there. Not that I should, but I mean, I used to go and then I just stopped. But you know, now I got my grandma with me everywhere, right? I mean, I've taken her camping and I put her ashes some places. You know, I took him to the grotto, put some there. And then first I started crying, going, am I separating her soul? Am I like, what am I doing here? Like,
That's
I just
the
left her up
fear.
in the mountains by herself, right? In the middle of nowhere, even though in the moment it felt really beautiful. Like, what a fucking horrible goddamn granddaughter am I? Like, I'm just leaving her pieces like everywhere. It feels so bad.
Isn't
I was
that
like,
funny how we come up with some of the most craziest way of thinking because of the beliefs that are ingrained in us? And you're like, am I really having this conversation right now? I've just ripped her apart and put her all over the place.
I know, horrible. I did. I was like, oh my God, I'm such a bad person. Why would I do that? And then I was like, what am I talking about? I just left her at the grotto too. I mean, I took her camping and I left her with her favorite plant. You know what I mean? I mean, I did this at the grotto and I lit a candle. She's right there where Jesus is. I mean, come on, it's beautiful. So, you know, I'm like, I did some things. I think it was cute. So it's about what I feel, not necessarily what everybody else thinks. So, yeah, you missed a whole good thing here, Linda. But very informational. I will say, what do you guys think for the first? I know it's a lot to take in, a lot in the last 2 hours, but you guys wanted to come back? I mean, because it's going to be a weekly thing.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. It's going to be a weekly thing, and then we'll take off
Triple yes.
after after this book. We'll take off like a week, maybe 2 weeks. And then, because the other books, this is the smallest book that we have. There is going to be, when I get these other books, I'm going to also go through and scan some of the things that are in the books that Anne has that say God, but it doesn't match the book that I have, the teaching book. So, but there are some things in there that I saw that I do want to address. And one of them is Lilith. So when I get those books, I want to make sure that those are put out here, and that her name gets some light to it.
My
So yeah, I think
Guide. She's one of my guides.
Hell yeah, me too.
so. I want to bring forth to, she must be one of mine because she has been with me for like the last 2 years, like being a pain in my ass about something. So but you know, it's funny, when I opened up the book, the first page that opened up was about her. And I said, that's
So
not
I
in my
know
book.
what I think is beautiful, and I'm going to throw this out here because I absolutely have to give grace to Michelle, and I absolutely love her. Lilith has been a learning experience for Michelle.
Oh yeah, a great teaching experience, that's for sure.
Big
Like literally, like the teachings of like, this stuff doesn't come from other people. This stuff comes from all the shit that I experience around. And
right.
so, you know, when Lilith first started coming around, she showed herself as a dark angel. She was very upfront about being a dark angel, right? And I was like, I don't like that. I don't like that feeling. I don't like it at all. Especially at the time, a couple years ago, especially at the time, because she was around a baby, right? This baby was born. This property has already had a lot of things happening on it. And I'm just like, oh my God, I thought what I was going through was great. Oh my gosh, you got this over here too. And so I was like, I don't know, you know, I'm like, even though, and I said this to the girl, I said, even though the vision I'm getting of her is not bad, doesn't mean she's not bad, right? Doesn't mean that she doesn't have all these other things, just because I don't, like, I could feel her like being kind, but that doesn't mean that she can't change, right? And that was my honesty. That's what I said, because that's what I first saw in her. And then her name came up again somewhere, and I'm like, what's going on here? And I ignored it. And actually one of the girls, she was pregnant, and she had said that no, I'm just not going to deal with this energy. I'm just not dealing with it, right? Because she talks to spirits, and so she was just dealing with things her own way. And but that property had a lot of stuff on it. And so I was like, her name was just kept coming up. So I said, okay, fine. I need you to kind of give me some more information on this. And I need to dive in deeper on who she is. And sure shit, she is the other side of Lucifer. That is the truth.
Oh.
Okay, it's not, it is the truth. She is the other side of Lucifer.
Mm-hmm.
However, Lucifer was already given a bad name from humans. So that even creates a whole nother mess. Because you think about, like, he really wanted to help people. He really, really wanted to help people. And regardless of why he was told to come down here, wasn't to turn around and punish him in that sense. That's what he wanted to do. That's what that, and you have to think, because there has to have a male and female counterpart, right? So, okay, fine. So then that put me on another traveling path. All right, let's go down here. And I still don't always agree with how this is being transpired, but I am not the one. That's me trying to be protective. I have to trust the process. And I have to also trust whoever's pregnant to know that's their energy inside of them. They need to turn around and make sure that they're protecting their child. That's not up to me.
Right.
Okay, that is up to the mother. But come to find out, she actually tries to protect the babies. Okay, right? So when we go into more things about her, which will be coming up, we'll probably do that at the end of actually reading this book, is when we'll go into that extra part, right? And go off of the extra things that can be addressed. And I think that that will really put some light on who she is, and I'll get messages at that time, right? And we'll all get some messages during the time that she's going to be present. Look at Danielle, she's like, yep.
She is,
So,
and I'm loving it.
she's
I'm
like,
watching
yep.
the look on her face. She's all, Really? Mhm.
So
I'm right
But
there
I
with you,
can
girl.
feel
I'm right there
her.
with you.
Because I can feel her. I can feel her. She's just like,
Right?
oh,
right. So there's gonna be
just you wait. You don't know shit about me.
Right?
well, and then come to find out a little story about me is I went because I was like, what is my relationship with her? What is it about? Why is this? Why does she keep coming? So it's fucked up as it is. Anyways, I went in to do my Akashic records and they blocked me from getting in. And I said, why am I being blocked? And they said, because you need to see the scene out front. You're not allowed to come in until you can deal with the scene out front. Okay, so I'm looking at the scenery and I'm this guy. I'm a man. Okay, there's an apple tree. I have a fascination with apple trees, by the way. I do know why now. So I'm sitting there and all of a sudden I'm like, what is going on here? And Lilith is in front of me and I'm like, wait a minute. What's happening? Who am I? I'm Adam. But who's Adam? Wait a minute. Am I Adam? I'm Adam? That's what I was like, me? I'm like, all right, let's talk about this. Let's get down and let's talk about what is happening here. And bottom line is Adam was an ass,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yep.
Just like the time that men took away the women's rights for many, many things. It really came down to I did a lot of bad things as a male. I really did. And I hurt her, right? And I apologized. I had to apologize. I mean, I felt to cry now because I felt like I felt her pain. I felt like I felt her. I felt the presence of like at that time of like sincereness. Like she was sincere in something, right? And I took that like I mocked her. Like I treated her so bad. Like I treated her like she didn't even matter, right? And I was like, my soul goes back that fucking far. I'm like, oh my God, right? I'm like, I've really done some fucked up shit. Um, but at this point, there's nothing I can do. I can't change that. I can heal that moment. So I did. I healed that moment because that was all I could do. And moving forward, the only thing I can do is hold a space for her now. I've healed moments that have come up because she wouldn't be the dark had we not created it for her. Had the humanness not created something, right? So she would even be where and and it's been said that it's not going to change in my lifetime, but we're starting the process. And that's all that matters is we're starting the process. But it's not going to change in my lifetime. So, and really depending on religion, if it ever changes 100% at all for her, right? Or for any of that aspect of it. Because if you can see energy, like I could see energy, most like me and Anne were talking the other day, most of these energy forms are just forms, or just energy built up. They're not angels, right? She showed a form at one time to me. She showed, an aspect of herself to me. So, it shows that there was a soul involved. There was something involved, something of a heaven like at one point. So, but that's one thing that I do love about my guides is they tell me the truth, but they also make me search out and find out they'll show me things to show me if I'm on the right path or not. Right. So I can't wait for that time to come because I think that it's going to be a great for everybody to be able to step forward and talk about her in a positive light and bring that forth for other people to hear someday.
Well, I want to say something just because, it was very pivotal for me when I had received the message that she was one of my guides. And I don't know, Danielle, if you experienced the same thing that I'm going to say, but I had experienced almost a type of longing and sorrow from her when she showed herself to me and let me know that she was one of my guides. But she also, and not necessarily her, but I also had, because another one of my guides, and he's probably for everybody, is Archangel Michael. And he said to me that my connection with her, whether it be dark or light, is up to me. That I'm the one that's going to make the decision of where I'm going to be led in her being part of my team, part of my guide group, right? And I've always had this really deep feeling in myself that no matter who it is that's a guide for you, depending upon what your intention is, because your intention is everything, has everything to do with what you're going to get and gain from that experience, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think it does. And I think that's one of the reasons why they wanted me to see where a lot of this originated, it came from, right? They wanted me to see all these things because, with coming forth being someone who's going to speak the truth of everything that I possibly can, I just hope that someday, I hope people don't come after me trying to chop my head off.
Stop it. Don't talk like
Here's
that.
a clear delete. Here's a clear delete for doing this, but I'm going to do it anyways. I'm going to stand firm. I'm going to go forward. And, I have conversations with other people that are religious. And I'm not out here to try to change everybody's mind, but I am here to give information. And if they want to hear it, then they can hear it. If they want, because, it's like somebody who, they want to complain about being sick, but if you don't want to be healed, you're going to stay sick.
Well, it's all about informed consent. So you put all the information out there and then people make their decisions based on all the knowledge given.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So with that said, hopefully Miss Linda can find us better next time. I am going to stop the recording though.